Judge Grasso. So, let's take a moment to talk about just, criminal justice, right?
Yep.
And you're obviously running for Queens DA. Good luck with all of that.
Thank you.
And I think we both can agree that the criminal justice system in the city and across the nation, just American criminal justice system in general, is not perfect, right?
Absolutely.
And so the question I have is, what are some flaws that you think the criminal justice has and could actually improve on?
So that's a great question. I guess the number one goal we should always strive for is to have a justice system that is not based on the financial resources of any particular individual. That we want a rule of law, we want a system of accountability, but we don't want a system that is heavily skewed in favor of people who can produce large amount of resources as opposed to those who either have no resources or very humble resources.
Yeah.
So I guess that would probably be, we could go on and on and on about flaws, but I guess at the core of it, equal justice for all should not be dictated by the financial resources of an individual.
And because I know you personally, I will also add to that it also shouldn't be based on how a person looks or a demographic, right? And the reason why I say that is because I've had my fair share of negative experiences with NYPD.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had negative experiences growing up when I did not look as put together as I do today. And I was actually in the Explorers program at the Queens DA's office at the time, but I still got stopped and frisked.
Right.
Because I looked like a suspect.
Right.
In my community.
Right.
Fast forward, I'm in John Jay, I'm in Floral Park. I'm waiting for a friend of mine to come down. I get pigeonholed between 5 cop cars.
Right.
Because my car matched the description of robberies in the neighborhood. Once they found out I was in John Jay,
right.
They're like, "Oh, you're trying to be a cop?" And I said, "No," because the way that they were treating me was very disrespectful.
Right.
So I said, "I want to be something better."
Right.
And they're like, "What? Like, what's better than a cop?" And I said, "A lawyer."
I don't know if a lot of cops would tell you that right now. So the morale doesn't seem to be that high.
Right. So
maybe then they would say that.
So I told them I want to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh." And then that's when one cop car after another started moving away.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right.
But my friend, who happened to be white, she came down and they believed her. They're like, "Ma'am, go back home." And she was like, "That's my friend." They're like, "Oh." And I was like, "Told you, I wasn't lying."
Right.
Right? And then I've been stopped by NYPD for no apparent reason in the Bronx as an attorney.
Right.
Where 2 times in Astoria and in the Bronx, I'm an attorney. One, I'm wearing a suit coming back from court. The other one, I'm wearing plain clothes winter. So I'm wearing a puffy Columbia jacket with my wife. And in both instances, I give them my driver's license and I give them my attorney card. And they question whether or not my attorney pass, my court pass, is in fact real.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So I share those experiences with you. I've also had positive experiences, but less than.
Mm-hmm.
I've had more negative than positive.
Right.
You know? And so in terms of my interactions, right?
Yes.
Like if I see an officer in the street, I say, "Good morning, officer," or 74th Street Station, you know? Those interactions are positive. But when I've had to deal one-to-one with police officers, they've mainly been more negative.
Yeah.
And I'm not so sure if my white counterparts who are lawyers have suffered some of the same experiences as I did. I'm curious to that. But personally speaking, I do understand that there are more good cops than there are bad cops,
Right.
just like in any sort of group.
Right.
So my question to you is, right, with respect to the distrust now with the NYPD, especially with communities of color and everything like that, like what is your take, or how do you respond to someone who is hearing you in your plan and what you want to do, and they think that it's business as usual, that it's just going to keep perpetuating the same sort of profiling or the disparities that communities of colors have faced?
Well, look, that's a multifaceted question. And the first thing I'd like to do is, as someone who spent over 30 years in the NYPD and had supervisory positions for pretty much my entire career, I'd like to apologize to you that you had to experience that.
Thank you.
Because, it just shouldn't have happened.
Right.
And the thing about a job like the NYPD, look, we've got 30,000 police officers, and you're always going to have some people who don't live up to your expectations and disappoint you. That's why one of the things that I said earlier, and I speak all the time proudly about the fact that 10 years of my 30 years career in the police department, I was involved in the disciplinary system and holding officers accountable for things like, abuse of authority. So notwithstanding the fact that I was then, and I remain very proud of my career in the NYPD and proud of what I believe the NYPD does for the city, I'm not blind to the fact that we need a system of rules and law and accountability that have to be applied to the officers. And sometimes they don't live up to them. But another thing to think about is there's a book, I don't know if you read Blink by Malcolm Gladwell. I would highly recommend it. And he has a piece in there on the Diallo incident.
I remember that.
And he kind of compresses it to the fatal flaws that can occur in like millisecond decision making. And it's a real challenge about how you train officers. And supervision is crucial, training is crucial, and we also have to constantly be on the attack. When I say on the attack in terms of, I guess, speaking as like a police manager, about combating, prejudices and instinctive prejudices. However, police officers do have to make split-second decisions. And sometimes it's just part of the job, life and death.
I personally believe police officers have a very difficult job, especially with the heightened legal standard that we have of criminal defense and prove innocent until proven guilty, right? Beyond a reasonable doubt. And so with that being said, I fundamentally believe police officers have a very difficult time, and law enforcement just have a difficult time just across the board. But they see the most horrendous things at times, right? And then, but what happens is that they have that baggage, just like individuals have that baggage too. They bring it to the next.
We draw from society.
Person, right? And so it's baggage from both ends.
Right.
It's how I see it, right? And so the fact that you're saying right and that you acknowledge that is also just very important.
You know what? If I can I tell you another quick story that I think ties into what we're talking about? I'll try and keep it. So this is something that happened when I was my first night, midnight, on patrol in Brooklyn. So this is circa January of 1981. About like less than 2 years on the job. So 63rd Precinct, I was with an older officer and a guy like with 20 years plus on the job. Very low manpower at the time, post layoffs, So they transferred us out of the 6-3 to the 73rd, to the 67th Precinct. 6-3 was busy, the 6-7 was extremely busy, East Flatbush. There was a housing development known to be notorious for violent activity called the Van de Veer houses. So this is a midnight tour, right? About 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, we get a job, a past robbery or some kind of or maybe an actual robbery in progress or a past robbery, something like that, at a particular apartment. Me and the guy I'm with, we go into this apartment. It was a house party. Everybody was tied up, all African American, and younger, a lot of women. Some of the women were sexually abused. Everybody was robbed. We just missed, literally as we walked in, whoever the perpetrators were had ran away. We were calling detectives. We were, untying people. We were getting ambulances. It was a mess.
Yeah.
So we had one woman, an African-American woman, I can almost visualize her as I'm speaking to you, in her 40s. And she saw one of the perps. She said she could identify. So me and this guy, Walter, we accompanied her out of the apartment and walking through a series of court, picture like 3 a.m., right? And it's a big complex winding through the courtyard. And you can imagine her state. And we were just trying to keep her calm. We're going to get you to the precinct so she could sit down with detectives and look at books. It wasn't computers then, the old books, and see if we wanted to solve this as fast as possible. All of a sudden, with me walking next to her, now I'm like a 23-year-old police officer. She lets out a blood-curdling scream. There he is. This tall, thin, African-American man, he was young, like say around 20. Only really within a year or two of me, little younger than me, tall, thin. He takes off like a gazelle. I'm still fast, actually, even I'm a runner. I was fast. So I take off. Now, I told you the scene I saw. This was serious business. Armed, violent robbery with sexual assault of multiple people. Whoever did that needed to be arrested. Anybody involved, and fast. I took after this person like a gazelle. He ran there were fences, like little cyclone fences. Along the way, as I was jumping over one of my faces, I had my gun out. I knew that there was a chance that this person could be armed. Mm-hmm. After like the second fence, I catch him. Put my gun in, I handcuff him. I actually physically get him over one fence. I physically get, that's him. Put him in the car, bring him to 67 precinct. To fast forward, we went 2 days in. Remember I told you arrest to arraignment time? I had like 15 complaint reports because of all of the paperwork was humongous. They used the overnight district attorney to come out, was like, they would organize a lineup with this guy, right? 2 days into it, I was in the system with like a big beard growth and all of that. DA comes out to me apologetically and says, Officer Grasso, she didn't ID. When she looked at him, she couldn't ID him as the perp. We had to cut him. And I was like, okay. But here's the point of this story. This could have went a couple other ways. Because when I got back, the older officer, he said, I thought I made a big bust there and all that. And he looked at me and he said, you young kids, what do they teach you in the academy? You're lucky he didn't shoot you and kill you. I'm jumping over fences by myself, chasing this guy. If he was armed, he could have just sat back and popped me. So theoretically, I could have been chasing him. He has a gun. Look at the scenario. 23 years old, dead cop. Well, let's think of another scenario. I'm chasing him, going over the fence. I had my gun, right? I told you this scenario. Let's say he charged at me. Let's say I pulled the trigger and let's say I shot him. So, scenario number one, he shoots me. for 3 days, maybe 4, I'm on the front page of the Daily News. The hero police officer, 23, was going to be engaged. They have the funeral. Other than 2 months later, I'm forgotten except to my mother and my family, like I never existed. Or it was a bad ID. He comes at me, I shoot him, white cop kills young African American. He was coming home from a basketball game. Now, look at this maniac hired from Valley Stream, New York. What kind of cops do we have? Maybe they indict me. Same guy, same circumstances, same deal. I was just a 23-year-old guy trying to do my job, Wilber.
Mm-hmm.
So this is one personal, thank God neither one of those circumstances. That's being a cop. That's being a cop.
Yeah. No, yeah. And I thank you for sharing your story, right? Because at the end of the day, it's a complicated situation, right? It's a complicated.
That's one of my, I shared a couple of stories.
You know, and so there's no dispute that it is a complicated
and extremely dangerous job. And sometimes, I mean, what was I being paid to put myself in the middle of that? I think I was making $19,000 a year, maybe less. We're not paying police officers big bucks in this town, not like Nassau and Suffolk. We're taking young men and young women. We're giving them the best training, the training we can. We're giving them guns, and we're sending them out into these god-awful situations. Sometimes they're seen as heroes. Sometimes they're seen as villains, but overwhelmingly, they're just decent people trying to do the best they can. Now, do we need accountability? Absolutely. Do we need the best training possible? Absolutely. But we need to be empathetic with police officers too. We really do. But you know, it's like anything else. You know, walk a mile in somebody else's shoes.
You're absolutely right, Your Honor. And so thank you for all of that. My last question is, you're running now for Queens DA.
I am.
And you've been very critical of the bail reform laws and everything, how it was procedurally pushed and enacted. But I want to focus on your initiatives, your ideas, right? If you can give us one idea that you would implement as Queens DA, you know, what would that be?
Quality of life. We need to reinvigorate quality of life enforcement. And for anybody who sees this and wants to delve into it a little bit more, they should go to my website, grasso4queens.com, hit platform. The first item is going to come up, quality of life. I will create something called a Community Response Bureau, okay? Community Responsiveness Bureau. The bureau chief reporting to me as district attorney. I'm going to divide Queens into 5 quadrants: Northeast Queens, Northwest Queens, Southeast Queens, Southwest Queens, and the Rockaway Peninsula. I'm going to oversee mini town hall meetings with the NYPD hierarchy, borough commander, commanding officers, community leaders, civic leaders, church leaders, and we're going to break down the community. So like here in Elmhurst, we'll get people from the community. And I'll do like a CompStat presentation. Everybody will see where the real crime is, what the data is, and we will talk about, are you seeing thefts? Are you seeing aggressive panhandling? Are you seeing drug dealing? Where are you seeing? What would you like me as the district attorney to prioritize? I will listen to the people. I will take their concerns and what they wish prioritized to heart. And then I, as the chief law enforcement officer of Queens County, will sit down with the hierarchy of the police department and devise a strategy where we will prioritize enforcement and accountability that is in line with what the communities we served want. And when I say accountability, it isn't jail and throw away the key. I was known as the program judge. I love programs for young people, programs for the mentally ill. My second priority is a mental health bureau because I think so much of what's going on is driven by people with mental health issues and substance issues. where I can help people and where I can divert people as part of accountability in lieu of jail, in lieu of Rikers, that's what I'm going to do. That's your example, and I'm very confident doing that over a relatively short period of time, over a period of several months, people will start to feel safer, and they will be safer in Queens. And that's how I'm going to have law enforcement work in partnership with the community, not at odds with the community. And I have the ability and the experience and the focus and the energy to do it. Thanks for watching, everyone. For more information on me and my campaign, you can find us at grassoforqueens.com and at Grasso for Queens on social media. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.
So now you know, Queens DA is up for election June 27th, and then general election will be on November 7th. You have the Honorable George A. Grasso. You've heard him here first. For more information, you know where to go. He's an upstanding man. He's an upstanding citizen. I can say that for myself out of all the many years that I've known him and his family. And so at the end of the day, the information is here for you to make an informed decision, and you already know what to do. Go out and vote June 27th and November 7th. Peace and love.